people to mute themselves. Okay. All right. So they are coming. Okay. So did you set it up as to allow them to come in as they enter the waiting room?
No, that's what I was
trying to do that.
Yeah, because I'm gonna have to keep admitting everyone. Let me see if there's a way to. Oh wait, hold on. There we go. All right, I just turned waiting room off, so everybody
can jump in.
Yeah, did you just suggest a recording?
No, I did not suggest a recording.
Read.ai meeting notes is requesting to record this meeting.
Oh, okay. That's not me.
That's you?
No, that's not me.
Oh.
But anyway, it's recording because I see that it's a recording, right, Tom?
Say that again. Oh, I think I just muted you. Can you?
Okay. There you go. There you go. Yes, I was asking you if you're recording, but I see that it's recording, so it's all good.
Okay, so the other thing I was going to say is we'll get to we'll give it a few more minutes. We got another minute here. Will this be in the sub 2 vault?
I believe people were asking to be recorded and to put in the sub 2 vault. So either we're gonna put it or on the Facebook files. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave that up to you. I'm not sure if whoever's, I don't see Tanisha, but I'm gonna leave that up to you because you wrote me into this.
Oh, thank you. Okay. As long as we're recording and we're saving this session, it's all good. And then we can start. It's 7 o'clock, and
yes.
Do you want to wait for 2-3 minutes? So we have about 30 some people in the room.
No, we can get going.
Yeah, because I know that you have an hour at your disposal, so
yes.
We want to
utilize let's get moving on it.
Yeah. Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is an impromptu session. Actually, it happened out of the blue. I saw Tom's post and on Facebook about his credit scores being, having this huge jump from 600 to 800, and I'm like, okay, I wonder how he did it, So I proposed a Zoom, so he was kind enough to accept, and here we are, all of us in this Zoom. Thank you, Tom, for accepting. Thank you for coming in and sharing your journey with us. If you can tell us, how were you able to jump like that, 200 points on your credit score? That would be fantastic, because for all of us here on the call, I think the real estate journey took a toll on our credit. Mine, I'm right there in that bucket. I used to be in the 790, 800. I am right now below 700. I'm not gonna mention what.
And that happens, right? That's what credit's for. So yes. Real quick, I'll just say, hey, everybody, thanks for jumping on. It's awesome to see everybody in here. We have a good amount of people so far, 53 people we're at so far. I'm happy to jump on and provide any nuggets, but I want to start off by saying I'm not like a financial expert. This is nothing legal. I'm no legal expert, so you shouldn't listen to anything I say ever. That being said, I'll tell you about my journey and how I did this. And I'm gonna throw a spoiler alert right out of the gate on how to go about doing this. So real quick though, before we get to that, if you have questions, like this is going to be more of like an open forum. Like we're going to pinball back and forth, I think, with some questions. But if you have questions or you want to jump out, just raise your hand in the chat. I can see the videos here, and raise your hand, and when we get to a break point, I'll call you out. Or if you want to ask questions in the chat, we'll get to a point and I'll just go through the chat, or Gabby, if you want to go look through the chat and pick out some questions as we go. Once we get to a point though, because these things go off the rails if we start answering questions as we're going. So feel free to ask your questions, but we're going to wait until I'll just answer all the questions in like one shot, because that just keeps it a little more organized and streamlined as we go through this. So that being said, spoiler alert, the way that I did this was I paid off all of my debt. And so I know that might seem a little simple, but that's the truth of it, right? So I was carrying a lot of debt and I paid it off. So that was hence the point of the big jump. But how I got there is a much longer journey. So we were talking about this a little bit just a few minutes ago before we opened this call up, but I've been working on my credit for 20 years. So I have it dialed in to the point where I can manipulate my credit score, and I know exactly what I need to do at any given point to fluctuate my credit as much as I need to. So 2 months ago, my score, like I have screenshots to show it, my score was actually 582 2 months ago. Now it's an 840. So almost a 300-point jump in 60 days. It's not easy to get there, but it is completely possible. So,
would you share with us like couple of tips, like what is most important? Like I wanted to understand, like if you are following all bureaus or Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion, if you are doing certain things specifically to boost your credit score. What is exactly the procedure? Like what are you following or what you're doing?
Yeah, so there's the FICO score breakdown, and there's 5 categories that you have. Actually, I'll just share my screen real quick to show everybody. If you don't know this already, then this is your most important. So 35% is your payment history. Are you on time? 30% is the amount that you owe. So 65% of your score is literally just, are you holding a balance and do you make your payments on time? 10% is the credit mix, 15% is the length of your history, and 10% is new credit. So every time you open a new credit line, it's going to dock a little bit. And then depending on how long your credit history is going to be 15%. So you got 25% right here, 35%, including the credit mix, which would be a mix of revolving credit lines like credit cards or store cards, and then do you have any loans like a car loan, a mortgage, personal loan, whatever, right? And so the majority of it though is amounts owed and payment history. If you stick to paying on time, like no matter what, you pay on time, and paying on time, just to clarify, while you should be paid on your date, you do have a window before you're late. So you have until that amount is due. And I believe and I may be wrong here, I don't know everything on this subject. I know a lot, but I don't know everything. So I might be wrong. Somebody feel free to hit me in the chat if I'm wrong. But I believe once your due date, I think you have like a 5-day grace period there. It's like 3 or 5 days that you can still make that payment and it won't register late. So the biggest thing is just don't be late. Set up auto pay. Like when I'm carrying high balances, I set up auto pay on everything so that at bare minimum, the minimum payment is being made. So that way, like my payment history is perfect since the beginning of time for my credit history. So if you have late payments, yeah, it's 5 with most. I'm looking at the chat like I'm not supposed to. But
yes.
But so, see, and that's why I shouldn't look at it because then I lose my train of thought. But yeah, so you have 5-day grace period. Just if you are late, I believe those stay on your record for 2 years. So you can get them removed, but it's very difficult. So just don't be late. The other thing is inquiries. So inquiries do tag your report, and they're actually not shown on here, but inquiries, like every inquiry is about 2 points. So if you have a ton of inquiries on your credit report, then it'll knock your score down quite a bit. Now you can get those inquiries removed also. That's a little bit easier, but you have to contact the credit bureau. There's they've gotten a lot tighter on that, especially very recently, where it's like almost impossible to get these freaking inquiries removed unless you're directly calling the bureau. But what a lot of people don't realize about credit is that with your personal credit is that everything on your credit report has to be 100% accurate. So if you look at your credit report, and I can pull mine up just to share it, but if you look at your credit report, then every piece of information on there has to be accurate, including addresses, including names, like alias names. They'll have a bunch of aliases on there. And a lot of times you look at that and you're like, how the hell did that come up, right? Somebody entered your name wrong. Well, everything tied to that name or that address is going to affect your credit. So if you get rid of those, like say Gabriela, they put 2 L's in Gabriela. You can dispute that because that's an inaccurate representation of your name. So you can actually get that pulled off of your report. So now once you clear up your name and your addresses, any names or addresses that are associated with that, you can dispute all of those. So if there's inquiries, if there's loans, or there's a report, a negative mark against that name, you can actually have that removed and then be like, this isn't me. So you can get a lot of that stuff removed, and all of those negative marks will improve your score. Depends on what amount it is. If it's an inquiry, it's going to come up slowly. If you have like a bankruptcy that's under the wrong name that you can get removed, that's a huge chunk of points. So obviously with creative finance, we don't need credit necessarily, but so the thing is a lot of this, we do, like, until you're at PACE's level, when you literally don't need it at all. And some people are able to knock it out of the park right away, but ultimately a lot of us are going to need credit in some form or another. And so making sure that you have that dialed in. Now, the other thing is the length of history, but also, I don't know if anyone saw Keston's post. It was a couple months ago now, but he posted, and I'm going a roundabout way of explaining this, but he posted and he had like $800,000 of debt, and it was showing he had like an 800 something score. And it was showing that 3% of his utilization was $800,000. So if you work the math backwards, then he has like $27 million in credit lines. If I'm, if the math is working correctly, if what he posted is accurate, which I don't have any reason to believe it's not, then, you can build that up. And the thing is to do it under business, but you need to leverage different cards, different accounts. So what I suggest, so you have to think about it like, and I'm a little bouncing around here because this is totally impromptu. I don't have like a structure to this thing, so I'm just kind of going off the top of my head on what I can think of to help people out. But what I did several years ago is I opened up a ton of credit lines. Like, I have this book. These are all credit cards. And so I have about $400,000 in credit lines. And so when I talk to a lot of people who have credit issues, like, one thing that's very, very common that people don't understand is the more credit lines that you have, the lower your percentages. You have to think in terms of percentages rather than dollar amounts, because a lot of people get like a $5,000 credit card and they're like, that's all I need. I need $5,000. Well, if you use $2,000 of that, that's 40% utilization. You want to use less, always stay under 30% utilization unless you don't need your score for an extended period of time. If you're willing to take the hit on your score, which is what I did, then you can leverage that credit. Just know you're going to pay interest on it. But if you have like what a lot of people do is they get a $5,000 card and then they put $4,000 on it. Well, in the eyes of the bank, that's 80% utilization. Versus if you have $100,000 of credit and you put $4,000 on it, now you're at 4% utilization. So it's the same dollar amount that you're spending, but in the eyes of the bank, it's the difference between your score. Remember that 35% or whatever, 30% is your utilization. So if you're at 80% utilization, your score is going to tank. But if you're at 4% utilization, your score will be way up. So that's a huge factor in that. So actually having more credit lines is way more impactful to your long-term score. So that's what I've been building that over time. But by leveraging personal credit lines, that gives you then the ability to go and leverage that to open business credit lines. And you can get business credit lines open, but the more strength you have in your personal credit profile, the more you'll be able to open under business profiles. So yeah. I was, you know, my claim to fame around business credit is I was able to open up $400,000, the $400,000 in credit lines. I was able to open that up in a weekend. And so by doing that in a weekend, now that was years ago. And if I had stayed on top of it, I would entirely have millions of dollars of credit lines right now, which I will in the next year or two, because now I'm going to go hard at it. But prior to that, I didn't know what I know now, so I can stick with it. But you can open up like up to $500,000 in credit lines, in business credit lines, every 6 months. So just think about the leverage.
Do you, so are you able to increase your, so let's say I have about 8 credit cards right now.
Yeah.
So how would I go about increasing those lines of credit?
Just call them and ask. But you need a good score. So you want to be in a good position. You don't want to be leveraging. So there's 2 different ways to do it, right? So one is just call and ask. But 2, if you want to stack the odds in your favor, start maxing that card out. Like if you have a $5,000 credit card, and we all know about Gator lending, right? You know, they give you the checks for the credit card. Like, depending on what you're interested, like be smart about it. Don't just go based off of what I'm saying. Again, remember, you're not supposed to listen to anything I say ever. So okay. Don't, be smart about it. Do your homework. But you could go write yourself a check for $5,000, max that card out. Now you have $5,000 that you can lend to somebody for EMD. If that's going to cost you what, $80 to or $100 to $400 to carry it for 2 months. And then you do what Kevin Cho does, and you're getting $2,500 back. Now you just net gain $2,100. You pay off that credit card. And guess what? Now you can go to that, you do that 3 times over. Now you can go back to that credit card company, Chase or whoever it is, right? And you can go, hey, I need more credit. Like I keep maxing, you see, I max this out every 2 months and I'm paying it off. Like max it out, pay it off, max it out, pay it off. And then just keep going to them and be like, hey, I need more money. I need more money. I need more money. And just like hammer them.
Yes.
Just, and if you get denied, ask for a higher up, and if you get denied, you get denied. Go back after it in a month, and you track all of this stuff. And that's how you start stacking, because you can take a $50,000 credit card and you just start, be smart about it. Don't do this just because I'm saying it, but be smart about it. But you can start maxing out that card and then paying it off. Or if you could use that card for a down payment or something, right? Like, or you use that card to then leverage credit lines with the banks where at a much lower interest rate. right? Go get I mean, now my rates are like 8 or 9. Well, they were 8 or 9% on my credit lines, but now they're probably in the 12 to 13 range. But still, that's way better than 24%
better
on
than the
credit card.
At 24% or 27%, whatever.
Right. Well, actually, it's like 30% on a freaking cash advance. So, if you're doing a cash advance, it's a 30%. So it's like mafia money. It's like, you got to be smart about it because you can get in trouble fast. But these are the things that you can do in leveraging that credit. And then I have a friend in San Diego who does this. He literally, he bought it. So he's got like Keston, right? So he's got tens of millions of dollars in credit lines. You can literally go buy so creative finance should be number one. But if you want other forms of leverage, this guy is literally taking credit lines. He bought a fourplex in San Diego for $600,000. He renovated it for $200,000. Did this all on credit lines. Renovated it for $200,000. So he's into it for $800,000. And then he burred it on the back end. He refinanced, and it's worth 1.4 million on the back end. So he refinanced it. He pulled $250,000 out of it, paid off the credit cards at 800 grand. Now he's got a fourplex that he's doing Airbnb out of, and it's cash flowing like $6,000 a month. And he literally did it with no money, and it's all credit line. And so because he has these massive credit lines, and then he pays off that 800 grand, and the hidden benefit of all of this is, you know what $800,000 does with points at 3% cash back? So he literally, not only did he pull that cash out, but he also got like $24,000 in rewards points.
Yes, so right. Travel for free.
Yeah, exactly. He literally travels everywhere for free. They just went to Brazil. They went to he just did a whole European trip. They were in Brazil for New Year's. Like, he travels all over the place, and they get like top notch, like everything. Yes,
I can imagine, because I spent a lot of money since I entered my real estate journey, and I was able to travel for free because of the amount of money that I was spending on my cards.
Yeah, that's what, like, I just got I actually, it was a really good deal, but I got a first class trip back from Jersey. Well, I was in Connecticut for a week, but I sat first class across the country for, like, it cost me $5 out of pocket because of points, but I mean, the points were so cheap on it too. I was like, no brainer.
Why not? Yes, exactly.
So
I see that Julie wants to ask a question. Would you allow her to ask a question?
Yeah, I just hit unmute. Let me see if I can. Oh, there we go. Hey, Julie, how are you?
Hey, good to see you.
Great to see you.
Hi, Gabby.
Hi.
Nice to see you both. Hey, so my question was about, like, my credit score is pretty good, but I don't have recent installment loans. That's always one thing that pops up. Like, I haven't had a car loan in ages, and I pay my cards off every month. I don't max them usually, but I've also never really asked for an increase either. So I'm just kind of wondering how I could change that kind of, like, my credit score sort of usually hovers between 790 something, and I think this last month it was like 808, something like that. But it always says lack of installment loan, recent installment loan, blah blah.
Honestly, like, anything over 780, it doesn't really matter. Like, you're gonna get approved for just about anything, because there's different levels. So you need like a minimum of 620 to do just about anything with credit, but that's like bare minimum. You're going to pay high interest. Once you get over, there's like different levels. So there's like 620, I don't know, I'm going to screw this up, but like 650, 660, somewhere around there. Then there's like 700 to 720 range. And then, like, once you get over 780, like or it might even be 760, it doesn't matter. Like, at that point, you're going to get approved for just about anything, as long as you can show income or whatever it is. So
well, that's the one thing. That's the other thing that hangs me up sometimes, is the income. Like, I was trying to get a stupid HELOC before the rates went way up.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, because I basically retired. I don't have a W-2. So they're like, well, you don't have income. And I'm like, how do you think I live in a paid off house? People,
right, right.
You know, you aren't going to give me a HELOC because I don't have income. I mean, come on.
So the other thing that I set up,
for.
yeah, the other thing that I set up, that the other thing that I set up is a whole life insurance policy. And that you can just loan off of with no questions asked. So you don't, I did a prepaid policy. So I just paid for it in full. So I don't have to worry about paying into it or losing it. And then from that, I can just pull like anytime I want. No questions asked. You just send them an email and I'm like, hey, I need $50,000 and they'll just wire it into my bank. So that's an option that you can do also.
So just a quick question on that. I don't want to take all the time, but is that pretty easy to get? I wish I had done one of those a long time ago, those whole life things, but I know you can get them for like 15,000 or whatever.
Yeah, you could set up a policy for any amount. So like, I mean, I wanted a big policy because I wanted to, I wanted to protect a chunk of change, and B, I wanted to not have to worry about making monthly payments to it. So I did it. I mean, I'll be transparent. I don't really care. I did it like a $250,000 whole life policy prepaid. So now you can loan up to 90% of that, but you have to be careful of the interest. Like you got to make sure you're paying down that interest every month,
right,
or I mean, every year, because that'll stack up. So like, if I want to, you can borrow up to 90%, but you got to make sure you cover that interest. They're going to push you towards, and there's probably people in whole life insurance in here that can speak way more to this than I can. I would suggest to talk to Kirk Hortle about it. He's actually basically my neighbor, but he's in sub 2, super knowledgeable, great guy. He also has a bunch of other tricks up his sleeve for like tax liability and stuff like that. But
yeah,
to answer your question, a lot of times what I figured out is a lot of times they want to set you up for a lower policy because they make more commission on it, because it's recurring, because you're making recurring payments. So they make commission for a longer period of time. Could be wrong on that, but that's been my experience in learning about it.
Instead of just like paying it up all up front.
Just throw it all in. Yeah. I mean, if you want to protect the money, like you basically double your money. You can throw the money in and then you pull it right out and it's tax-free. It's a loan. So it's tax-free money. So your money versus like, if you put money into a savings account and pull that money out, then that money's gone. Like you're not gaining interest on it, the 0.0002% that you're getting anyway. But with a whole life policy, that policy is in the insurance company and that's gaining like a minimum 4% a year. Then you loan against the insurance company. So you're loaning, like, let's say you put 250 in and you loan 150 back out, you're paying 5% interest on this. You're gaining 4% over here on 250. You're paying 5% on 150. So your net on the 150, you're a net negative 1% per year, but you have to just make sure that you're paying off that 5% interest only on a yearly basis, or eventually you just go and pay the note off. But you can hold that note forever if you want. And then what happens is that's basically a hedge against your death. So when you die, they will just take that money from the policy. So if you have 150,000 outstanding on a $250,000 policy, when you die, the payout theoretically would be $100,000. There's a lot more complication to it, but I'm not going to get into that. So
I would just say to get the book Becoming Your Own Banker, because it really just explains just what you said in detail. It's really a great book. I'm kind of reading it again right now.
Yeah, exactly. Be your own banker, and you can continue to grow that policy over time. You can do all sorts of stuff with that. But that bypasses any need for credit in the banks. Also, was my point behind the whole life insurance policy. But
people are asking again, Kirk, what was the last name? Kirk's last
Kirk
name?
Portal. I'll put it in the chat.
Yes,
It's gonna get
and
blown
also,
up. Just make sure you tell him I sent you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Julie.
Yes.
Great to see you. Oops.
Also, I believe Mary Kang, she is aware of whole life policy. I believe she's good at it also. Her name is Mary Kang.
Say that again.
So Mary Kang from New York. Also, she's good with whole life policy. And yes, we have Leslie. He wants to ask a question.
Yeah.
Can you unmute him?
Hey, Tom. Hey, Gabriela.
Hey, what's up, Leslie?
Doing great. Doing great. Question, and I apologize if you covered this. I just stepped in the store and had the volume turned down. So, do you have a source? I used to use like Fat Wallet / Finance for sources for financial and credit cards and stuff like that. Do you have a good source these days?
I don't. I just manually do it. Like, if you're talking about going to apply for multiple cards.
No, I'm more like forums, blogs for information, things like that.
Oh,
I use Slick Deals. I've used Fat Wallet in the past, but they went away. I think NerdWallet does a little bit of that.
yeah. I mean,
sure
there's a lot of sources out there. I mean, I find a lot of stuff. Honestly, like I'm more into the social media aspect. I find more people on like Instagram and YouTube, and I learn a lot about it that way. I don't have any specific forum or anything like that I go to. I mean, I find articles on, usually when I'm focused in on a topic, I'll just Google it. I'll search YouTube, I'll search Instagram and Facebook, and just find as much information as I can about the topic at that point. But I don't have any go-tos.
Fair enough. I just wonder if there was something to replace some of those that I used back in the past. So
yeah. No, I mean, everything, like now we're in such a microwave society, like everything's just so quick at your fingertips that, it's like I'd much rather watch somebody talk about something for 10 minutes on a video with visuals than reading an article. But I read very slow. So all these books back here.
Tech stuff I want to read.
What's that?
I said, I'm the opposite. For like tech stuff, I want to read it.
Oh yeah. See, I read so slow, and then I have like such bad ADD that like I read a sentence and then my squirrel brain goes off. It takes me like an hour to read an article.
The way I am too, but when it comes to tech stuff, I want facts and figures,
Yeah, I got you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Absolutely.
The call.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks for jumping on. All right. I saw some questions roll through in the chat, but I don't know. Do you have any written down?
Yes, I'm scrolling through them to read some to you in a second. But I was like advising everyone that if you guys have a question, please feel free to raise your hand and come and talk to us, because we are trying to kind of do this like incognito, here.
Oh yeah, about loan history too. Just to go back to Julie here, because I'm reading through the chat. One thing you can do too, if you're going to do like a credit boost, which by that I mean, so there's a strategy you can do where you can mass apply for cards. That's what I did. And also, so there's a couple factors to that. So when you mass apply, so when you're applying to cards, one thing you want to really focus on is the quality of the card. And I'm going to speak in layman's terms here, but the quality, there's different qualities of the card, and maybe quality is not the right word, but so the cards that have annual fees, generally you're going to get more credit line on. So if you go with I don't even know the different levels, Premier, Signature, whatever it is, right? So like you might look at something like a Chase card and they have a free annual fee, a $95 annual fee, and a $195 annual fee. If you go for the $195 card, in a lot of cases, and do your research on this, don't just go based on what I'm saying, but when you apply for the card that's got the $195 annual fee, which in different mindsets, you may look at that and be like, well, I don't want to pay $200 a year for a credit card. It may be the difference between you getting a $2,000 credit line, a $5,000 credit line, and a $50,000 credit line. So paying that annual fee is well worth it, because what happens is you get a $20,000 credit line on the top level with Chase. Well, then you go to Wells Fargo and you say, hey, Wells, Chase, in banker talk, you're like, what they're doing is looking at what you're already approved for. So if you're approved for 20 grand with Chase over here, they're going to go, well, Chase gave you 20 grand. We're going to give you 20 grand, or we'll give you 30 grand because we want to be better. So you go, and once you have these lines, then it's a matter of getting rid of your inquiries. But if you do this in a condensed time period, meaning like same day, and you go and stack a bunch of these applications, you need to structure yourself the right way. So you don't want to go and just mass apply, because you'll end up shooting yourself in the foot. And it gets kind of complicated, so I'm not going to get really into the weeds here. But when you mass apply like that, that's how I got all these cards, right? Because I did this all in a weekend. So I set it up on Friday night because they stopped reporting. And what I'm doing is racing the computer system to like report the inquiries, because at a certain point, especially the bigger banks, like Chase has a 5 inquiry rule. Like you cannot have more than 5 inquiries. If you have more than 5 inquiries, it's an automatic decline no matter what. So you want to go to them first, but you want to figure out who has those automatic rules and then go and stack accordingly. And you just got to go and hammer away at applications and go to your banks and ask for business credit lines. Now, in order to get a business credit line, you have to have a business that's been around for 2 years and shows income. A lot of these, you can just say on the application what your income is. So in my case, when the business was newer, like I had an entity that was 2 years old, but it wasn't active. I was projecting that I was going to make $250,000. So putting that as your income, then they're more inclined to give you higher limits because they think you can pay them off. Again, don't be stupid. Don't go opening up all these credit lines and have no plan for paying them off. What I've done through the last 20 years, especially the last 4, let's call it 10 years, is I make sure if I'm gonna rack up credit, I have some I don't want to call it emergency, but I have some offset to that debt no matter what. So worst case, I sell a house and I've got $100,000 in equity. Okay, well, I can spend $100,000. That's not the brightest way to do things, but I always make sure that I'm able to pay this all off. Worst case, shit hits the fan. If I need to get out of it, you can always file a bankruptcy, but that's a whole different ball game. And that's a whole different, like, you have to be prepared to have shitty credit for 7 years. So don't, like, bankruptcy is, you can get rid of them. Again, there's tricks around that. Do your research, but I don't recommend bankruptcy. I recommend that as an absolute last resort because of the impact it has on your credit, or just don't plan on ever using that credit again for the next decade.
Mm-hmm. I have a question from John Piquel. He says, how did you get your score up to 200 points in a month? Was it a pledge and insurance high limit loans or what?
No, so I literally just paid off a bunch of debt. So I said it in the beginning. It's no secret move that I made. I sold my business and liquidated a bunch of debt. So to give you guys some backstory on me, I've talked about this privately with some people. Gabriela, you know my story, but I'll just open it up to this call because I don't have anything to hide. I don't really care. And if I can help you in any way, then I'm happy to do it. So last year, right after I did this whole Zoom series with Hung Mai about Airbnb arbitrage, I had this lingering lawsuit that was hanging out there that I was certain I was never going to lose because it was so in my favor that there was no way they were going to win, except they had a really good lawyer and he found one little crack and he exploited the shit out of it. And they ended up winning the lawsuit. Don't need to get into the details. It was from a fix and flip I was doing in 2020. The contractor pulled some really shady business, overbilled me by a lot of money. They sued me for it. The lawsuit took a year. I ended up owing a ton of money in a very short amount of time, like immediately. So that basically wiped out my cash on hand last year, literally right at the end of like June, like now of last year. Right at the end of that Zoom series that we did, I got completely financially wiped out. And my business still had $50,000 a month of expenses. So a lot of that it's very complicated, long story, but a lot of that just got put onto credit and that's where this started stacking up. So I sold my business. And then I sold a property that was along with it. And that's how I wiped out all this debt in one shot. Also, for anyone who's made it this far, I'm moving back across the country to Connecticut. I'm buying a business creatively back there. I haven't really talked openly about it because it's in the very preliminary stages, but it's definitely happening. It's just a matter of time. So I'm going to be moving back across the country. I'm actually leaving next week. And we're going to RV I totally went off the rails here, but we're going to RV across the country and stop all over the place. So I'd love to see you guys. Maybe I'll post like a list of where we're going to be at what dates and whatnot, but we'll be in Montana for the community camp. And then we're going to hit like 35 states. So would love to see you guys do some meetups, whatever we can do. Would love to get out and meet some people along the way. We're going to be all over the Pacific Northwest, Midwest, Florida, all over the place. So that's a really long-winded way of telling you how I jumped my score 200 points, because literally everything else on my credit profile is essentially perfect. So all that was holding me down was the amount that I owed. I had like 85% credit utilization. Actually, at one point it was up to like 96%. So I wiped all of that out in one shot. And so by doing that, my score went from 582 because, real quick on the mass apply, when you do it in a short period of time, I believe is it a 30-day window or same week? I don't even know what the time is, but when you do it all together like that, it only shows up as like one inquiry on your credit report because in a certain time window.
I knew that it has to be in like 48 hours.
Yeah. So any inquiries, right on, J-Rod, I will hit you up. I don't know if I'm gonna be in South Cali though, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, it's when you shrink it down to a really short time window, it minimizes the inquiries that actually apply to your credit report. So it makes it easier to get those removed, because when you go and say, whatever, like I didn't authorize these, then the credit bureau has to go back to whoever applied for that or process that application. So say this happens at car dealerships all the time. They go, oh, it's only a soft pull on your credit, but then it turns out to be actually a hard pull. And so you can go back to the credit bureaus and say, I didn't authorize this, remove it from my credit report. And they have 30 days. They have to go back to the dealership or whoever pulled that credit report, get proof of signed authorization that you approved that, which most places aren't going to go through that effort. They're just going to be like, forget about it. And so if they can't prove that that was a legitimate inquiry, then they have to remove it. So you can get a lot of that stuff removed within 30 days. That's also something I got like 5 inquiries wiped off of my report in that 30-day period as well. So, so that also contributed to the big jump in credit. But I went from like 90% utilization to 0 in a 30 day, like basically then you're just waiting for it to cycle. So once the cycle hit, that's why actually those pictures were taken like less than 3 weeks apart, because I paid it all off right before the cycle. So the cycle hit, and that's where my score shot up.
Yeah. So Bobby is asking, what's the best way to contact the credit bureau?
Just call them. You got TransUnion. Oh, and to answer your question before about which one do you focus on, all of them. They're all important. Right. And especially like I'm working with the SBA right now. So they're pulling from all 3 bureaus. This is also part of like why I needed to do this, because I'm buying this business. I need to go through SBA lending, and I wanted the best profile possible. So I liquidated all my other stuff that was holding my score down. And it's also a rebalance on my life, because it's been a rough year from a financial perspective, but I needed this balance also to weigh things out. And as much as like I'd love to be out accumulating property right now, I get hit every day with deals. It's just not in the cards right now. And I'm focusing entirely, like if you follow Logan Manzanares and what him and Katie are doing with their cleaning business, they're actually not acquiring real estate right now. They're focusing on one thing, scaling that business. For me, when I take over this business in a few months, that's going to be my sole focus. And eventually, like the purpose of that is to build the cash flow that I can then invest into long-term properties. If you're building a real estate business, focus on just building that real estate business. But if you're focusing on real estate business and gator lending and apartment buildings and Airbnb and midterm rentals, those are all different categories, and you're going to get nowhere. It's going to take you so much longer. And everyone that is, I'll just tell you, like what I see from my perspective is everybody that's getting really dialed in and really focused on one aspect. If it's Airbnb, great, only focus on that. If it's fix and flip, not my cup of tea anymore, but feel free. Like if that's what you're focusing on, focus on that and get mentors who only focus on fix and flips, like Ryan Pineda or whoever. But I mean, I think all you need is in sub 2. You literally, I've been a bunch of different masterminds. You literally find everything you need in here, except for like the business mastermind. Obviously you'd want to go deal maker with Abraham and Pace, but but just get focused and stay focused.
Yes, exactly. Like everyone says, laser focus on one thing, and then just become the best you can be at that specific thing, and then move forward. Or
listen to Alex Hormozy's podcast, because he, like, I listen to him a lot. I listen to a few different podcasts, but his is one that I listen to repetitively every day at the gym, and he just goes over so much of this stuff. And I was listening to, he just posted the second half of his interview with Indy Frisella today or yesterday, and it's straight fire. Like you got to go listen to it. It's just so good. Like listen to the first part too. Miles, what's up, man?
Miles, I think you have to unmute him.
Yeah, I just asked to unmute. I think, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm in the car with you right now. So it sucks today, but how long do you plan on being on?
Say that again.
How long do you plan on
being on here?
Yeah.
Probably only another 15-20 minutes.
Gosh. Okay. Yeah, we've had such a crazy day. I guess a question I could ask, not just maybe reach out to you about it, but like, did you go over just credit score stuff in general, like reaching out to credit bureaus, how to find, identify any remarks on your credit that you're trying to remove or consolidate or whatever that might be on your credit score?
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is, I'm just going to mute you here just for the background noise. But the thing is just focus on like inquiries, new accounts. The other thing too I didn't mention is new accounts when you do a mass apply like that. So for instance, To answer your question, bureaus, all three, focusing on, I don't know if I'm totally answering your question, but you can always shoot me a message afterwards too. Feel free to hit me with a message or whatever. I'm happy to talk to you about it. But the length of credit history does get impacted because like I had like 20 years credit history. And then when I opened all these accounts, it dropped that down because there's so many accounts stacked up that it dropped that down to like 6 years credit history. So now my credit history is like a little questionable, but every year that goes by, it just grows. And so, and then when the thing is, okay, so I didn't totally explain this before, but by building up your personal credit line access, then when you go for business credit, they're going to look at what you have access to on your personal side. So if you have $100,000 on your personal side, they're going to go, all right, we'll give you $100,000 in business and we'll give you another $50,000 credit line. You know, so that if you only have $5,000 in your personal credit, they're only going to give you like 5 or 10,000 in business credit because they're going to balance that based off of what your personal credit is. Unless you can show cash flow and your business is more than 2 years old. If you're not 2 years old and you're trying to go for business credit lines, you should definitely do that, but you're going to get lower credit lines. So it's going to take time to build this up. So like if everyone, you know, not that I'm expecting everyone to follow what I'm doing, but like if you like just watch, and I don't want to posture and talk about what I'm going to do, but literally as soon as this business that I'm buying has been in business for 44 years. So they have a ton, and they don't use credit. So I'm like, golden opportunity. I'm going to walk in there and open up like $1 million in credit line because I have an 840 score. I'm going to be past the SBA process and I can literally just go to the bank and be like, here's our inventory. Here's our everything you need. Give me $1 million. And they'll be like, okay.
Where are my millions?
Yeah, exactly. And then every 6 months I can go back and be like, hey, we need more money, right? Like again, don't be stupid. Don't over leverage, but you can really leverage heavily and use this stuff. And especially for like what we're talking about in sub 2 with EMD and Gator lending, like you can go and use credit lines for Gator lending, especially if it's short term. You just make sure you cover your, you know, do some math and make sure you have your stuff figured out, but you can always do that. So I talk a lot and I go off on tangents. So I don't know, Miles, if that totally answered your question, but you can always, go ahead.
Yeah. So I've really tried to study like all the aspects of kind of what you just said about like being able to increase the business credit lines by leveraging your personal credit.
Yeah.
But I think my challenge is there's been some things on my credit report that I'm trying to remove. And I'm getting a car and the same dealership actually basically hit me with pulling my credit several times.
Yeah.
So I'm with Chase Bank and my banker actually told me that I could call the credit bureaus and basically tell them, hey, there should be multiples of these because it was basically one inquiry, but there's like euros to get one thing, but they hit it with like multiple inquiries. But my challenge is it's so freaking difficult to get in touch with these bureaus. I don't know if it's so easy. Like I'm trying to like find numbers or reach to people and like it's hard to get to them directly to like talk about. I don't know who specifically talk to.
Yeah, I think I mean I did it virtually. I just submitted through a software that I have to submit for credit inquiry removal. But I had the same thing happen to me where it was like, I hate car dealerships for this reason because they're like, oh, it's just a soft pull. And then you look and there's like 7 inquiries and you're like, because what they do is they shop it to all their different lenders at the same time. And they tell you it's a soft pull and it's not. And then you have to deal with the repercussion of it. And so,
that's happened to me last
it happens to everybody. It's freaking bullshit. But but you should be able to just call the bureau and get if you call them directly. I don't know the process, so don't hold me to it, but you should be able to just call them and get somebody on the phone and just say, hey, listen, you know, That's how I understand it, at least, but it's probably
so,
more complicated than that because they don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, Tom, Ernest asked what tool you used to virtually request inquiry removal.
Yeah, so it's a tool that I got. It's called Credit Hero. It's actually for like credit repair business. I was looking into starting credit repair business before this other business opportunity popped up, which, by the way, I saw the question before. The business that I'm buying, it's a family business. It's my parents' business. I grew up in that industry. If you know me from Airbnb, my past life before that was in, it's called the hearth business. It's fireplaces, it's alternative energy heating. And so it's a $4 million business. I'm buying it creatively for 2.7. And we're working out a deal where if everything goes right, I should walk from the deal with no money out of pocket and should be able to pull like 200 to 300 grand cash out of the deal. So it's a pretty sweet setup. But so that to give you background on that. So when this popped up, I wouldn't just move across the country for any business. This is just, there's a lot of history and heritage there. So it's a really good opportunity. And that's why I'm also giving up my dream life in Arizona and in one of our first like dream houses. So to go deal with
one of them, Tom. You're gonna have more of them.
That's it. Yeah. It's a big change in a very short time period. So it's hard. It's very bittersweet because we love this house. We love the area. We love Arizona. And it's like, we're giving it all up to go back to a place that we swore we were never going back to 5 years ago. So yes. It's all good though. It's all for positive. We're gonna make a ton of money and there's gonna be a whole new story to tell after that. So
I'm sure
that's that deal. Who are the contractors we're not going to use? I don't know. I'm Manuel, I'm not sure what you're asking there.
So also, Miles is asking that what do you think was the biggest factor to huge jump in your personal credit? But what he explained before is just paying off the debt, you know?
Yeah. So
for example, Tom, for those that don't have the funds to pay off complete the debt. Yeah. What is the strategy for that?
Okay, so what you can do there is, I mean, it's work and it doesn't happen overnight, right? So we see these things, and just to be fully transparent, we see these things, we see people having successes in certain areas. And we talked about this, Gabby, right before the call, we were talking about this briefly. You see people have successes in certain areas. And, you know, maybe you're seeing somebody with $100,000 check or whatever, or a 200-point jump in credit score, right? There's always, this doesn't happen overnight. There's always a backstory. There's always a lot of work and struggle that went into that result. So the problem that we have is we all have shiny object syndrome, and we see, oh, this guy made, you know, my first flip, the worst thing that ever happened to me in real estate, the first flip that I did in 2017, I made $125,000 on that flip. I just come out of a business that didn't go so well. And so I was like, holy shit, I've been missing the boat all this time. This is easy. I'm just going to do this going forward. It's not easy, and it is not my cup of tea at all. I hopefully never, I shouldn't say never, but I hopefully will not ever be doing a flip again in my lifetime. I probably will, but you get the point. So
well, that was in 2017, Tom, yes. And then 2020 was a different story for the flip. That's why you were so upset about the flip, right?
Well, no, it was the progression leading up to that. Yeah, it's like I got 125 on the first flip. Then the second flip I should have made like, I mean, theoretically, I should have made like 200 grand on that. And I ended up only making like 60. And so I was like, all right, it's still a win, but it's not as big as it could have been. And like, whatever. The next flip I did, I lost. It took 9 months and I ended up losing $10,000 on it. And so I went progressively down. And then the next flip that I did was the lawsuit. So while I gained and it took 11 months plus a year-long lawsuit after the fact. So yeah, it's been not the most fun game for me to be doing fix and flips, but
Yeah.
that was also before I found Sub2, before I had the network that I have now. So it's a whole different story, it's a whole different lifestyle.
Correct. I agree with you.
But that being said, like flipping's not an easy game. So the whole point of this is, you know, things take time. And so to get these massive results, that's an accumulation of a compound effect. So the thing is don't get discouraged by me saying that, just start now, right? The best time to, what's the Chinese proverb? Best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now, because not like, especially even knowing what I know now, like I could have shortened my curve so much, but by doing it now, like in 2 to 3, like give it 2 years, right? Like think in terms of, so I love this quote, right? Thousandaires thinks in terms of days, 100,000aires think in terms of months, millionaires thinks in terms of years, billionaires thinks in terms of decades. So if you're thinking longer term, we have to expand our time frames. Everyone wants, we're in a microwave society, but if you want to stay a thousandaire, keep focusing on what to do today versus, if I want to be a billionaire in 10 years, what do I need to be in 10 years? And then work backwards to get to today. And then focus on what daily boring ass tasks you can do on a daily basis, because it's the boring tasks that make you all the money. Focus on what you can do, focus on one thing that you're going to be a billionaire in, and go focus on that. Or if you only want to make $1 million or a couple million, focus on a year or 2 years from now. But 2 years from now, you can have all the credit in the world and be stacking and rack, like Bobby Castro says, right? Like you can stack up your wins. You can start taking that credit, leveraging credit for lending, for buying, for everything you need it for. And then, you know, you can just keep building it from there. Just keep building, just stay aggressive. Just don't get lazy.
Yeah. We have a couple of questions to Tom. Would you like to take them?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Bobby. Oh, Bobby
was first, but it disappeared.
It just dropped.
It just dropped.
Patrick, you can unmute if I can't pull you up because you don't have your camera on, but
Hey Tom, how are you?
Good. What's going on?
My question was about the lawsuit. What was your corporate structure that allowed him to, I mean, curse the corporate veil and get so much money from you?
Non-existent. That's the answer. I had a single member LLC, no protection. So I got hammered on it. Okay. But that's, see, again, knowing what I know now, like if I had known then what I know now, I could have just been like,
what would have been the corporate structure that would have protected you? You having money going to the parent company that owned that LLC, or?
Well, yeah. So I'd have a holding company that's anonymous, and then buy the house in a separate LLC. And then, I mean, if you want to, it depends on how bulletproof you want to go. I mean, for me personally, like this is where Kirk is a genius at this stuff. Kirk Hordle. It's not cheap, but neither is a lawsuit. So it's way cheaper than a lawsuit. And I can tell you that I could have paid for Kirk's services many times over. But if you want to go, it depends on how bulletproof you want to go, because from there you can have your holding company owned by a trust. You sell everything into the trust. And I might not even be saying this right. So again, don't listen to anything I say ever, but you can put it into a trust, and then the trust is owned by a C Corp, which is over the top, but it depends on how big you're going. Like the bigger you get, the more protection you want. But when you're owned by a C Corp and then everything's in a trust, you're literally bulletproof. They cannot get to you no matter what. So, so, you know, that's the way that you structure it. And knowing what I know now, yeah, I might as well have been naked. Like it was bad. So
sorry to hear that, man.
I mean, hey, it's a really expensive learning lesson. And you know, God doesn't throw anything your way that you can't handle. I'm better off for it. I learned a lot. It made me take a step back and analyze everything that I was doing and what I actually wanted to be focusing on. And, you know, it was a very expensive learning lesson, but it's always a blessing in disguise. It led me to sub 2. It led me down the path that I've been on for the last 2 years. So, you know, I could have gone to college and had a piece of paper on the wall for less money,
Yeah.
but I still would have ended up in this boat, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
But it's all I try to find some positive in everything, as much as that's really sucked. You know, you try to just stay positive, keep going forward, and you know, as long as you learn from it. If I end up in the same boat, then I'm an idiot. But knowing what I know now, that won't happen.
Well, I asked the question because I've done a few flips myself, and I've only been in a single member LLC. Well, not single member, it's a partnership, but
Yeah.
and it's kind of the same thing. You just have an extra person in there.
Yeah. So the one thing I'll tell you from my lawsuit that I learned, and if everyone on this call that's left doesn't take anything else away, I'm going to pull a little sales tactic here. Remember this, because this is the one good thing I got out of that whole lawsuit. Because there's a whole nother side to the story with my lawyer, who turned into a complete asshole the day of the trial, but that's a different story. The one thing he said that I took away that will be burned in my head forever is go into every situation as if it's going to end up in a lawsuit. So when you said you're into that with a partner, I would say not only protect yourself for the property, protect yourself from your partner as well, because assume nobody goes into it expecting a lawsuit, but when it happens, you want to be prepared, because it will happen.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So if you think it's over the top, it's not. Trust me. Like, if I could go back and knowing what I know now, like structuring everything, there's no way I'd be in the same boat, because I just go way hardcore. People are like, no, that's too much, and I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I'll gladly pay the $1,000 or whatever it's going to cost me to go do that, so I don't lose, you know, my whole bank account again.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Just protect yourself as much as possible, and do, you know, always pay the money to get a good lawyer too. Like, I thought I did a lot of research on my lawyer. I checked referrals. I mean, he had great reviews. He had great word of mouth. He knew his stuff. He really knew his stuff. And the day of trial, it was like Jekyll and Hyde. It was like he showed up after 8 months working on this case, like we'd never had a conversation, and I could have killed him. I was like, he didn't even have like the opening number that we were disputing right. And I was like, I sat in your office for 3 hours yesterday, went over every detail of this case. How do you not have this right? And 10 minutes into an 8-hour trial, I knew I was going to lose. So it was brutal. And I don't wish that on anybody. I don't wish that on my worst enemy. It sucks. There's nothing good about it. The only people that win in lawsuits are lawyers. So avoid it at all costs.
Yes. Yeah, true. That's hard. It's a hard lesson.
Yeah.
To go through.
Oh yeah, it's tough, but it's a good learning lesson.
Yeah. Okay. I believe we don't have any other questions here. Laura was kind enough to put a few numbers for Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion in the chat. So you guys, I'm gonna copy paste and put them here so you can see them. And you guys can call and you know, remove inquiries or you know, file disputes with them to kind of help with your credit scores. Do you have Tom, do you have like a couple of tips at the end? I know that you wanted to kind of wrap up into an hour. So,
yeah. Oh yeah. See, time flies, and I talk a lot. Yes. So I need to be more structured on these Zooms. This was so impromptu, and
Yes, I know.
I bought an RV 2 days ago, so that's been kind of taking precedent, getting all that stuff organized.
Yeah. We can do another one maybe down the road when
I mean,
more preparation for that and more structure, and we'll kind of have a little bit more information.
Yeah, for sure. And also, and maybe we can get some of these other guys on who are more experts in the situation. I'm just speaking from personal experience and what I've learned by trial and error over the years, and learning more recently through social media and just learning from other people on these topics. But there is a ton of content on like YouTube. I mean, YouTube University it's cliche, but you can learn so much for free on YouTube about all of this stuff. Like, I just start searching it in YouTube, and endless videos pop up, and you can go down the rabbit hole. But just the biggest thing is just educate yourself. Don't make the same mistakes that I did, especially if you're sitting here and listening to these and you plan on going down any of these paths. Like, certainly feel free to reach out to me. Hit me on Instagram. I'm going to be documenting this journey over the next several months. The plan is pretty heavily, but I have to like force myself into that mentality because I'm not consistent about it. But I'm going to be trying to put together some YouTube content and some Instagram content on the whole journey across the country, buying this business, all the good stuff that goes along with that. I have to be careful on the business stuff until the deal's done. But after that, I'll unleash a lot of information, probably more like September, October timeframe. And that's all I got going on. Hit me up on Instagram. Feel free to shoot me a message. I'll try to get back to everybody. I try to answer as much as possible. If I miss you, just don't feel like you're bothering me. You can shoot me another message if I don't respond in a reasonable amount of time frame, like a couple days. But other than that, I don't know. I don't really have anything else. Any last questions or anything?
Thank you, Tom. The last question was like, okay, where should we start to start with the credit? I have a question from Christopher. Like, where do we start? I guess to monitor your credit is to be able to jump on all the bureaus to make sure that you know at all times your credit scores, and no matter what like you're doing, like pay on time all the time, right? That's what you said. Most important, pay on time, and dispute all the inquiries that you have on the reports. Make sure that all the information is correct for you, and pay above the minimum payment all the time.
Yes. Yeah, that's if you're holding balances, try to pay above the minimum payment, but make sure you have an auto pay. Like for me, at least, I set an auto pay on minimum payment just to make sure that it's satisfied every single month, no matter what. And also, like if you're doing Navy Federal, just a heads up, if you're doing Navy Federal and you don't have an account with them, then you need to set up, they're really annoying about this, but you need to set up like a manual auto payment. They're the only ones that I've ever missed payments with, but I get it removed every time because I call them and give them shit for having a really outdated system. But basically just make sure that you're covering your minimum payment all the time. Like with some of the credit unions, they have like outdated software. Like make sure that you're paying, like I just set an automatic payment of $200 every month, and I think the minimum payment was like $100 or something, but I was just like $200 every month, make sure that goes out and they're satisfied. To get started, I would say first check your credit score, make sure that you have a decent credit score. Ideally decent, I'd say, is over 700. Like 680 is as low as you want to be. If you're below that, do some credit repair, find out what's holding you down, and start working towards correcting that. If it balances, so this is one other thing I'll throw out there. So we lost quite a few people on here, but one thing I thought of before that I wanted to say is to mitigate that. What you can do is, now it depends on how bad your situation is. If you're really bad, then you got to do some work and you got to get really focused on it. And maybe that should be your sole focus until you can, which maybe like fixing your credit sole focus might mean like flipping or wholesaling houses until you can pay off those balances. Like make that your sole purpose in life. Go wholesale, or building cash flow takes time. Wholesaling will get you so much money in a much shorter amount of time, right? But get out there and just hustle, like hustle, work your ass off, get that paid down, focus on building your credit, because I promise you, when you get to this level, like all the doors open up for you. So when you get to this level in credit, so when you're like, if you're low, what you can do, get your credit score to where it's a decent rate, right? Or a decent score. 680, you want to be over, the higher the better. So don't make 680 your minimum. If you know that like you wait 30 days like I did, and all of a sudden you're going to take a huge jump, wait the 30 days. Don't go just because you just got a 680 credit score. Like my score went from 580 to 630 to 713 in like a 5-week span. But I knew that I was going to go into the 800s. So I could have gone and started my applications and everything when I hit 713, and I would have been fine. But I knew it was going to get up once you get over 800, like they look at that and they're like, no more questions, right? Like they're just, here you go. What do you want? How much money? Right. And now I have these big credit lines behind me. So they're like, oh, you got 100,000 here. Here's 100,000. Right. So like, but what you do is as you start progressing, now you may have to do, like, everyone's different. Every situation's different. So this is, I can't like pigeonhole one situation. You got to figure out what is going to work best for you and what the path is. But what you can do is actually leverage what personal credit you have. Go open business credit. Make sure that it is something, a line or a credit card that has 0% for 12 to 18 months that you can do balance transfers on for 3%. That's usually what it is. It's like 2 to 3%. Go transfer, open those up, even if it's $10,000. Get $10,000 off of your personal credit onto the business credit. Once you do that, now you're opening up $10,000 in personal credit line. The business credit doesn't report to your personal credit line score. So if your business credit's not reporting to your personal score, then you clear out that balance. Like for instance, for me right now, I'm carrying a ton of debt on my business cards, and I also leverage my wife. So I leveraged her personal line as well as my own. That's how I was able to do 400 in a weekend. I did my personal, her personal, and a business credit. So it's across 3 entities, personal and structures, whatever you want to call it, right? So, but right now it's like that big, you know, those puzzles that are like the slide puzzle, like one block's open and then it's like a line and it's all jumbled up and you got to slide each block over, right? The camera, but you get what I'm saying? Like, this is what you do with credit. Like, so start leveraging that. You get your business credit. Now you have 10,000 here, move 10,000 onto that. You have a spouse or significant other who's willing to go along with this and they have good credit. I just saw this today and it's brilliant, right? There's a reason they're called significant other. Sign if I can't. So use their
what happens
credit.
if you don't have one?
What's that?
What happens if you don't have one?
Well,
Joking.
Somebody
go ahead
else.
And explain that.
Somebody else, a kid, you sucker somebody. There's a sucker everywhere, you know. But no, don't take advantage of anyone. Don't forget I said that. But no, but like you can leverage other people's credit and then you just start moving it around. And the more like once you clear out, like you can clear all of your debt out onto business is ideal because it doesn't report to personal. And worst case, it's unsecured. Don't hold me to this or anything. Like, again, don't listen to anything I say ever. But worst case, it's unsecured. You can always file bankruptcy on the business. Don't use that as a strategy. But if you get in hot water, like there's always that possibility, right? So it's an out that I don't suggest, but it is there. So again, be smart about your credit, but start using the slide game. When you clear all of your credit onto someone else or a business line, now your credit score is going to go through the roof. Now you can open up a lot more credit. And guess what? You can also go and open up a lot more business credit. And once you open up more business credit, then you just start leveraging all business credit. And when you leverage all business credit, utilization doesn't matter with business credit because it doesn't report to personal credit. So you can load up on business credit, and then just keep your personal credit, like keep using it, and then you can start playing with points. There's a whole nother strategy there with playing with points, but that's how you like fly around. Like look at Pace, like he flies around the country for free, and he gets, everyone in his group gets upgraded to first class every time he flies because of how much he travels. But it's just, you can build stuff like that, you know, like it's completely possible. Like all of this is totally possible, and it's within your reach. If you have a newer business, just strategize like years out. You know, stop focusing on what to do today and tomorrow, and start focusing on what you need, where you need to be in 5-10 years, and then build backwards. And that will tell you what you need to do tomorrow and today, versus trying to figure out what I need to do today to get to 5 years from now, if that makes sense. But
yes, yeah, definitely. Do you want to take another question from Patrick?
Yeah, that's
Patrick.
I'm right.
Hey, Patrick.
Hey,
What's up, man?
I have a buddy here. He wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
Hey,
What's going on?
hey, how you doing?
Good.
Good. You mentioned on some of your lines of credit that you had like a 9% or 10%. You mentioned really, really low interest rates.
Yeah.
And for credit cards, that is, for me personally, that's a new one. Usually I'm
So there's credit cards, which is, and then there's credit lines. So credit lines, so a credit card is a card. It's, you know, they give you a credit line, $10,000, whatever it is. And you're going to pay high interest on that because those are high risk. So they're completely unsecured. Generally with the business, it's secured against cash flow and assets of the business. So you have a line of credit, kind of like just like a home equity line of credit. So you would have a business line of credit that's secured against cash flow, against assets of the business, inventory, anything like that. So if you can prove that, now with a line of credit, you're going to have to prove your cash flow. So they're going to want to see records, they're going to want to see tax returns, whatever it is for the last 2 years. And they want you to prove that you're making $250,000 a year or whatever it is, right? So they're a little stricter, but credit lines are beautiful because you can literally just, like, I have a $50,000 credit line. I can literally go into my credit line in my bank, transfer $50,000 into my bank account, no questions asked, no penalties, no points, nothing. Just put $50,000 cash in my account that I can work with. And now I'm paying, I mean, when I opened them, they're always like, they're higher than mortgage rates, but they're significantly lower than credit cards. So I think right now you're going to be more in like the 12 to 13% range, given it's like prime, what is it, prime plus 5, I think, or somewhere around there. Like usually, so prime's at 8% right now, you're probably gonna be around like 13%. Whatever it is, right? Like rates are just getting ridiculous all across the board. But so yeah, lines of credit are like golden if you can get that, you know.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you, Patrick. Also, Shelley asks, what's the best website to check credit score? So I don't think there is a specific website. I know that I'm with Chase, and Chase, allows me to see my FICO score. Also, I have Experian. There is a free version and a paid version. On the free version, I can see the Experian score, but on the paid version, I think it's $24 a month. You can see all 3 bureaus.
Yeah.
Do you use a specific website, Tom, or?
So
just...
I set up, because like I said, I was working towards setting up like a credit repair and also helping with business funding, which I started working on building that, and this other opportunity popped up. Not to be shiny object syndrome, but I wouldn't do this for just any business. This is something that's like literally in my blood. So that's why I dropped what I was doing, because I want to stay focused, because I could easily for the next 3 months work on credit repair. I've worked with a few people, had some progress, worked out some kinks, but there's other people who this is all they do and this is their focus, and I would suggest to go there. I could probably make a good living off of doing this, but it's not something I want to learn and build and grow from the ground up when I can go buy a multi-million-dollar business that's already running. That I also know like the back of my hand. So Robert says he's doing business funding and credit repair. Link up with him. We could, maybe we can touch base afterwards, because like there's not, I don't know everything on this, right? And like I don't, this isn't my primary focus. I just know how much I can leverage this, and leverage is the name of the game. Like Hormozy says, if you give me a lever long enough, I can turn the world. So it's all about leverage, and financially, that's all we want is financial leverage. I started saying something else and I forget what it was, but Robert, well, you probably know the answer to this, Robert. If you file bankruptcy on a business, are the credit cards and lines personally guaranteed? A lot of times they do want you to do a personal guarantee, but a lot of them aren't secured. Like they're secured against the business. So if you do a personal guarantee, I mean, if you're filing bankruptcy on a business, it depends on your situation, right? Like it depends on if you're filing bankruptcy personally also, which I don't recommend, but some people, that's their only option. And you got to protect yourself first. So if try not to personally guarantee as much as possible, but if you have to in order to open these lines, then that's what you got to do. And then can I explain the life insurance policy strategy again? Okay, so I have a whole life insurance policy. There's only specific agents in the country. There's like not a lot of them. For whole life, I would say talk to Kirk. But what I did is I had a chunk of money sitting in the bank that actually I had it in investments. And it was actually, so to be fully transparent, it was actually when this lawsuit was coming down, I was getting a little more nervous about losing it. I didn't want to get entirely wiped out. And so, although I kind of did, but like I wanted to protect as much of my assets as possible. So I opened up this whole life policy. I just took the chunk of change because I didn't want them to have access to it. So I took the chunk of change, threw it in a whole life policy, and I did a prepaid policy. Now you can do, so it's got to be whole life. Again, not an expert on this by any means. I can just tell you what I've done personally. The whole life policy, I did a full prepaid $250,000 policy. The reason I did that is because I wanted to double my money as quickly as possible. So you can loan back 90% of your money off of that policy, but it doesn't go like a bank loan where if you have money in a savings account, you can do a personal guarantee loan against, and I'm going to butcher this, but so bear with me, like just follow along as best you can. If you borrow that money from the bank, that money's gone. It's not gaining interest anymore. But with an insurance policy, you're putting money in one account and you're borrowing from the insurance company. So this policy is gaining 4% a year. So at $250,000, it's gaining what is that, 8,000 a year or something like that, 10,000 a year.
10,000.
So 10,000 a year, right? So now you're borrowing however much you borrow, $100,000. Let's just use simple numbers, right? So I got 250 over here gaining 4% a year. I got $100,000 that they leverage this against the death benefit of this policy. Rather than pulling the money from here to get the 100, they're pulling from the insurance company to get the $100,000. So now you still have 250 here that's still gaining as if you never touched it. And you have $100,000 over here which you can borrow up to 225 off a $250,000 policy, but you borrow $100,000 and you're paying 5% interest on this, which also, by the way, you don't have to make monthly payments on. Like you don't have to pay this policy at all. As long as it does not exceed $225,000, you're good. Like if once it goes past 90% and it's considered overdrawing the account, they will cancel the policy and deduct everything that you owe, and you'll get a small check back for whatever's left. But if you keep the policy active, which basically just don't ever cross the 90% threshold, then you literally don't have to make payments on this. Next year, this loan will be $105,000. and then the next year it'll be 100 and whatever 5, it's compounding, so it's 5% on top of 105, so whatever that is, now it's $112,000. Then next year it's $121,000, whatever it works out to, right? But it will continue to compound, but you do not have to make payments on it. That's why I suggest the more that you borrow, you at least pay the interest payments on it, so that that $100,000 loan stays a $100,000 loan. It doesn't start compounding interest over time, or just pay it off when you don't need it, right? Or whatever, when you can. But you can literally double up. Like, this is how people take out policy after policy after policy, like Chris Noggle. Look up what he's doing. He's got a whole program on this. I don't know anything about it. I'm not advocating for it. I don't know anything what's involved with it, but I know it's all around this strategy. You can, again, look up YouTube Bank on Yourself, or whatever, what the book that Julie said was, Be Your Own Banker. Any of those terms, look those up and start researching it. And like, this is the power of whole life insurance. And whole life insurance, by the way, is like the oldest form of insurance in the world. Like, they've had this for centuries, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it goes back a long way. But this is how, like, the extremely wealthy people protect their money. The Rockefellers and all of this, they all had whole life insurance. They all had trusts. They all had all of this protection to secure their money. But on top of that, it's also like tax-free money. Like, you put money into the policy and then you can loan back against it. And any loan is not income, so it's tax-free. So you can literally take all this money back out and use it, and you're paying a small percentage of interest. There you go, becoming your own banker. J-Rod, I don't totally understand that question. The interest goes back to your account. So the interest on the loan goes to the insurance company. So that's how they make their money, right? And then they're investing that money. But the interest part of it, you're paying to the so there's two forms of interest. Maybe that's what you're asking, but the interest that you're paying on the loan goes to the insurance company. The interest that's coming in on your policy is going in your account, and you can actually stack that. And then you can continue to add, like on my policy, I can add like $60,000 or $65,000 a year to that policy, continuing to gain 4%. So the beauty of whole life insurance is, while they're investing in, again, not an expert, but as I understand it, they're investing in the stock market, but you're guaranteed no loss. It's contractually guaranteed that you are going to gain every year, regardless of whether the market's going up or down. So if the market's down, like it's doing right now, when it's fluctuating a lot, and like last year it dropped quite a bit, you're still guaranteed that baseline interest gain. As the market goes up, you're going to gain along with the market. So if the market goes up to a 12% gain, you're going to move with that. It may not be 12%, but maybe you gain 10% that year. So it's super powerful stuff, and you're guaranteed no loss on that. And then you can continue to borrow against that and that gain as well. So it's just like, this is why they call it infinite banking, because you can literally just keep pulling money out, and it's hedged against your death. So unless you're planning on, passing a ton of money on to the next generation or something like that. Like for me, I don't have kids. My dogs will be gone before I am. Like, my wife will be around, but we'll structure everything else. You know what I'm saying? So like, I can borrow that money. I never have to pay it back. And then they'll just deduct it out of my death benefit. And when I die, if I go before my wife, then there's 100, whatever is left, because the other thing too is, like, structurally the policy continues to go up. So like, I can pull it up real quick, but my policy, like, I put 250 in right now. The cash value is over $400,000. And that was not two years ago, not even a year and a half ago.
That's amazing.
It goes up for the first 5 to 7 years, I want to say, and then it starts coming back down. But at like 7 years, it's going to be worth $5 million. So I can't borrow all of that, but like, it gives me a lot of, that's my death benefit. So you can only borrow against the cash value, but still like that continues to grow every year. So as that grows, Claudia said this is what people should get instead of a 401k. Not financial advice. I would say I would invest in a whole life policy before a 401k for me. Everyone's situation is different. Again, do what's best for you, do your research. But personally, I would always go with a whole life policy over a 401k. But it all depends. Like, right, like if you're working for a corporation and they're matching your 401k, well, that's free money. So, you know, you gotta weigh out the factors and just figure out what's the best case scenario for you.
Yeah, totally. I agree. You want to share that with us?
Yeah.
Are you still looking for your policy or?
Yeah, I can. Let me just log in real quick here and show you. So I can show you my dashboard, what it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know a couple of people in sub.
Did I hit the right one?
Did you?
Yeah.
There is something. Yeah.
This is Lafayette. I lost my screen. Oh, here we go. Okay. So I have like 8 monitors here. So, so let's see. So yeah, my total death benefit right now is $404,000. My cash rider. So my base, so right now, after the loan that I have against my policy, there would be $165,000 payout.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you
right? Am I reading that right? I might not be reading that right. It might be 70,000. I don't know. It's one of these. And then like as you get older, they'll offer you a cash surrender value. So like right now I could tell them if I really wanted to, I could just go to them and be like, hey, I don't need this policy anymore. And they'll pay me $67,000 because that offsets the loan that I took out as well.
Oh, I see. I was about to ask you, what about the 250? Because you put
right,
into 50,
because
but you took a loan against that.
Correct.
Afterwards.
So because I have that loan outstanding, the surrender value is 67,000. But if I was to die, I believe the cash value payout would be 165 because that's, I don't know, that doesn't seem right either. I don't know.
But you have
I'm
a loan
an expert
against yes. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so like this is what your policy looks like. Yeah, so you can see, I think I took a 175 loan 2 years ago. It's up to 184. I've made some payments on it, but minimal. I just kind of like mitigate. So I can borrow up to $43,000 right now. So I'm a little on the high end of my loan value, but that money's protected. Like the 280, 250, whatever is still gaining. And right now, like, so this value right next year should be over 500,000, which means that if I die, there'll be another $100,000 here on the base cash value.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's very interesting stuff, but it's just educate yourself on all of this stuff. Like it takes time, but we all got time, right? That's like listen to what Gary Vee says. We're all in such a hurry to get there, right? But like, where is there? So just continue to gain information, continue to learn, and just protect yourself as much as possible. And that's where like the beauty of this community, like, you know, you don't have to be doing anything, but you have access to so much powerful information. And there's an expert in every subject in here. So just put a post out. Don't be shy. Reach out to us. And by us, I mean literally anybody. Me, Gabriela, Pace, all of the people in sub 2 are here. So that's my closing pitch for sub 2. Just leverage the community that you're all a part of, and you know, we can all rise together so much faster. Yes,
definitely. Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you so much for your time. I know that we went over your allotted time, but we appreciate you. Thank you for the information you shared with us. And maybe within a month or two, we're going to put another Zoom together. Will be more structured, and we'll answer more questions. And who knows, maybe a whole life policy will be the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can,
Yeah.
maybe I'll zoom from the road.
Yeah.
I saw Julie. Oh yeah, we could get Kirk on here. I'm sure he'd love that.
Exactly. Claudia has a good idea.
Yeah, we could get Kirk on to talk about, man, he's gonna owe me a big freaking commission. No, we could get him on talking about whole life policies and trusts and all that stuff. And yeah, happy to do it again. I'll be on the road for a couple months here. So again, I'd love to see everybody. Hit me up, shoot me a message, and let me know where you're at. And I'll probably post like a schedule of kind of like what paces do. I thought about it. I was gonna do a post, but I think I might just do like a link to a site or something, or I don't know.
Yeah,
But we're gonna go from Arizona up through the Pacific Northwest, and then down into Colorado, and then back up into the Dakotas and Minnesota and Chicago. And then we'll get down to Florida, and then back up the East Coast.
Wow, that sounds good.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome.
Cool.
All right.
Well, thank you
so
everybody that's still here. Thanks for hanging out with us, and feel free to shoot me a message, or Gabriela, and I will see you all on the next one.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great
good night, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, for sure.
Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.